Hello and welcome, my dear friend, my beloved chosen one. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has supported these messages through the Super Thanks feature. Your generosity doesn't just help me keep creating, it helps this truth reach people who are searching for hope, guidance, and clarity. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart, whether you donate or not. I am deeply grateful that you are here, listening, and walking this journey with me. Your presence matters. Your willingness to show up for your own growth matters. And if today's message speaks to you, I'd love for you to comment 999 as a public declaration that you're ready to align with what heaven is doing in your life right now. Now, let's talk about something we were never really taught. We grew up believing heaven only notices the grand gestures, the big sacrifices, the public prayers, the unwavering faith that never cracks under pressure. We were taught to imagine God smiling down only when we were at our boldest, loudest, and most obviously spiritual. But here's the real truth, the one most people never say out loud. Heaven notices the quiet things. Heaven sees the small yeses, the moments that seem invisible to the human eye, but send ripples through the spiritual realm. Heaven feels the weight of those sacred choices no one else knows you made. Think about it. Those times you stayed silent, not out of fear or passivity, but because you knew that explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you was pointless. The restraint you showed wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. And wisdom is a language heaven responds to. Or what about that night you decided to go home early, not because you couldn't handle being around people, but because you knew your energy was sacred that evening? You didn't want to spend it on small talk that would leave you feeling empty. That choice might have looked like nothing from the outside, but it was everything in the spiritual realm. Why? Because you were guarding the temple, that is your soul. And every time you guard your temple, heaven nods in agreement. We underestimate these moments because they don't come with applause. There's no one there to witness them. No instant feedback to validate that we chose well. But think about Jesus in the wilderness. The world didn't see his private no to the enemy's offers, but that no shifted the course of history. In the same way, your quiet yeses to God and your quiet no's to what isn't of him are building something eternal. And maybe this is exactly why you're here today, because you've been wondering if the unseen things you've been doing matter at all. You've been wondering if your growth, your healing, your private alignment is actually being noticed by the divine. And I'm here to tell you, it has, it is, and it always will be. So, as we move through today's message, I want you to keep this in mind. The next chapter of your life is being written right now, not in the loud rooms where everyone is watching, but in the sacred spaces where only you and heaven know what's happening. And if you feel that truth stirring in your spirit, drop 999 inch the comments, not for me, but for yourself, as a marker that you're ready to walk in the kind of alignment that moves heaven even when the world isn't looking. God's chosen ones, heaven stood and applauded your last move. When you forgave not because they had earned it, not because they apologized, and not because the wound suddenly stopped hurting, but because your soul deserved to be free. You made one of the most powerful moves a chosen one can ever make. Have you ever realized that forgiveness is not a gift you hand to the other person, but a key you hand to yourself? That day, whether you knew it or not, you unlocked a prison cell that wasn't built around them, it was built around you. And the moment you chose to step out, heaven noticed. Do you understand what that means? Heaven didn't just glance in your direction, it stood not with fanfare, not with a thunderous spectacle the world could hear, but with something infinitely greater, a sacred standing ovation that only eternity could give. Imagine this: the very angels assigned to your life leaned forward, smiled, and clapped in holy agreement. Why? Because they understood what you just did was not a small act. It was a spiritual earthquake. It shifted timelines, broke chains in the invisible realm, and silenced accusations that had been whispered over your life. You didn't shout about it on social media. You didn't announce it to the world. You simply chose truth over bitterness. And that truth echoed louder than any performance ever could. The Bible reminds us in Matthew 6-4, "Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Could it be that your greatest breakthroughs will come from the victories nobody else saw? Think about Nelson Mandela, who after 27 years in prison emerged not with vengeance, but with a heart committed to reconciliation. The world remembers him as a symbol of peace, but heaven saw him long before the cameras did. When you forgave, you walked in the same realm of spiritual authority, choosing the harder road, the one that costs your pride but restores your soul. Doesn't it make you wonder how many blessings have been delayed in people's lives simply because they refused to let go of an old offense? The truth is, forgiveness is a weapon disguised as surrender. It disarms the enemy without you having to lift a finger, as Ephesians 4:32 say. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. You lived that verse out not in theory, but in action. And here's the part the world rarely understands. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing to remember without reliving the pain. Take Corrie ten Boom, for example. After surviving the horrors of the Holocaust, she faced one of her former captors and chose to forgive him in person. That single act carried more spiritual power than years of sermons, because it was proof that darkness cannot extinguish a heart guarded by God. Doesn't it strike you that your own choice to forgive placed you in the company of such world changers? You didn't need a pulpit. You didn't need a crowd. You just needed the courage to release what was poisoning you. And heaven clapped when you forgave. You also aligned yourself with one of the deepest truths Jesus ever taught. In Matthew 18:21-22, Peter asked him how many times he should forgive. 7 times. And Jesus replied, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a posture of the chosen. And on that day, you proved you were not just talking about faith, you were living it. Doesn't it make you wonder how different the world would look if more people responded the way you did? Imagine the wars that would end, the families that would heal, the communities that would rise if forgiveness was chosen over retaliation. Consider Pope John Paul II, who forgave the man who tried to assassinate him. He visited him in prison, held his hand, and spoke words of grace. The cameras captured it, but heaven had already recorded it. When you forgave, your moment may not have made headlines, but in the courts of heaven, it was no less historic. Colossians 3:13 tells us, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Isn't it extraordinary that your obedience in this area positioned you for the same kind of eternal recognition? And let's not forget the hidden victories in history. Think of Louis Zamperini, the Olympic runner turned WWE soldier, who was tortured in a Japanese prison camp. Years later, he returned to Japan, not for revenge, but to forgive his captors face to face. That's the kind of power that shakes both heaven and hell. In the same way, Your choice to forgive was not weakness. It was a demonstration of divine strength. It told the spiritual realm, I am not bound by what was done to me. I am bound only by what Christ has done for me. Isn't that the very essence of what it means to be chosen? Salm 103, 12 declares, as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. When you mirrored that kind of grace toward others, you didn't just release them, you reflected the very heart of God. Have you noticed how much lighter your spirit feels since that day? That's not an accident. That's the evidence that chains really did fall off. And while you may think it was just an internal shift, the ripple effect of your decision has already begun to touch areas of your life you haven't even connected yet. In the end, forgiveness is not about the applause of men, but about the alignment with heaven. And when heaven stands to applaud, it is not for show, it is for record. What you did was written in the eternal archive of your destiny. You proved to God, to angels, and to the watching cloud of witnesses that you are not swayed by the weight of offense, but moved by the wind of His Spirit. And if heaven celebrated your last move, imagine what it's about to do for your next one. So let me ask you, are you ready for the doors that kind of obedience is about to open? Because, chosen one, this is just the beginning. You see, chosen one. There's a kind of clarity that only comes after you've been deeply misunderstood. It's the kind of clarity you can't buy, can't fake, and can't rush. It doesn't show up in the applause of the crowd, but in the quiet moments when you realize their misjudgment was never a reflection of your worth. In fact, have you noticed that sometimes being misread by people is God's way of positioning you to be rightly read by heaven? There's also a kind of strength that is earned, not displayed. Strength that's forged in the fire of false accusations, in the long nights of silence, and in the slow rebuilding of trust with yourself. The world might have missed it, overlooked your growth, because it didn't come wrapped in noise, but heaven didn't. Heaven saw every tear you wiped away before anyone noticed you were crying. Heaven measured every ounce of self-control you chose when anger would have been easier, and heaven recorded it all. Because to heaven, your quiet victories are louder than any earthly headline. Let's open this up a little more. Most people spend their lives chasing a feeling, though they don't realize it. They tell themselves they're chasing the promotion, the perfect relationship, the recognition of their peers, but if you strip it down to the core, they're after something far deeper, that unshakable sense of rightness, that alignment where soul and purpose lock in, and you can say with certainty, this is where I'm supposed to be. Have you felt that lately, that subtle click in your spirit that tells you you're on the right track even when circumstances haven't caught up yet? Ecclesiastes 3:11 reminds us, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. That longing you've carried isn't random. It's a God-seeded compass pulling you toward alignment. Here's the twist most people never see coming. That deep sense of alignment doesn't come from finally being seen by the world. It comes from finally seeing yourself. Think about Oprah Winfrey, who spent years being underestimated in newsrooms where she didn't fit the mold, only to realize her power was in being fully herself. The moment she embraced her own voice, the world followed. Could it be that the clarity you've been seeking isn't about waiting for others to validate you, but about you choosing to validate yourself? That's the shift heaven has been celebrating over your life. You're no longer waiting for permission to stand in your assignment. And lately, you've been doing this more and more, haven't you? You've been catching glimpses of your reflection, not in a mirror, but in the choices you make, the boundaries you set, the prayers you pray in the quiet. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, "And we all are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory." That's what's been happening to you. You're not chasing an image they can approve of. You're becoming the image God already called good. And the more you step into that, the more the noise fades and the clarity sharpens. Consider the story of Steve Jobs, who, after being fired from his own company, didn't crumble under the weight of public embarrassment. Instead, he saw himself more clearly than ever before, returning years later to lead Apple into historic success. Sometimes being misunderstood is the push that forces you to see the truth of who you are. Doesn't it make you wonder how many times God allowed certain people to misjudge you just so you could be reminded of the truth he already spoke over you? Another example, Rosa Parks. The world remembers the single act of refusing to give up her bus seat. But that moment wasn't about public recognition. It was about alignment. She knew exactly who she was and where she was supposed to be. Her quiet strength shook an entire system. When you've been aligning with your calling lately, even in small, unseen ways, you've been walking in that same spirit. Isaiah 32:2 promises. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." That's the kind of guidance you've been tuning into without even realizing how deeply heaven approves. Even the life of Howard Schultz, who built Starbucks into a global brand, speaks to this truth. He came from a poor background, often misunderstood in the corporate world, but he stayed aligned with his vision. It wasn't about coffee, it was about connection. Similarly, your mission isn't about the surface details others see. It's about the deeper calling that only you and God truly understand. And that's why heaven has been applauding you. You've been moving differently lately, haven't you? Choosing integrity over image, purpose over popularity, peace over proving yourself. Philippians 1 says declares, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." Every time you've chosen the higher road, you've been stepping deeper into that completion. The world may still be catching up to who you really are, but heaven is already standing in ovation. And if this is what happens when you start to see yourself, imagine the glory that will be revealed when you fully walk in it. Are you ready for that? Because, chosen one, this clarity is only the beginning, even in the moments when you're not entirely sure what the next step looks like. Chosen one, you've stopped reaching for the same old patterns that used to hold you back. That in itself is a holy victory. You're moving differently now, not because someone gave you a checklist, not because a motivational quote told you to, but because you've learned to trust your own divine rhythm. Have you noticed how your decisions lately feel less like reactions and more like revelations? That's because you're no longer trying to dance to the beat of someone else's drum. You've found the cadence heaven set for you before you were even born. Psalm 37:23 says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way." That ordering isn't always flashy, it's often subtle, but it's always powerful. From the outside, it may look small. You didn't necessarily walk away from your job, launch a global business, or uproot your life to move halfway across the world. But inside you made a shift so profound it will change every decision from this point forward. You stopped asking others for permission to feel what you feel. Think of Maya Angelou, who refused to silence her truth for the comfort of others. Her courage didn't always come with grand gestures, but with daily choices to honor her voice. Haven't you been doing the same? In your own way. Every time you honor what God is stirring in your heart, you stop looking for confirmation to trust your gut. That alone places you in a rare company of those who understand that faith often requires action before evidence. Hebrews 11:1 reminds us, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Consider Thomas Edison. He didn't wait for a guarantee before inventing the light bulb. He trusted the unseen process, failing thousands of times until the light finally came. In your own spiritual way, you've been striking matches in the dark, trusting that the flame will come. Because you know the one who promised it, you started choosing peace, even when your ego craved noise. That is not weakness, that is mastery. Think about Mahatma Gandhi, who led a movement not through weapons, but through peace. The loudest thing about him was his stillness. Every time you've chosen to remain calm when provoked, to respond with grace instead of anger, you've been moving in that same spiritual power. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." That's the posture you've been adopting, not a posture of defense, but one of divine confidence. And here's something you might not realize. Angels notice that kind of courage. They don't gather just for explosions of glory, for the big life events that make human headlines. They gather when truth flows through someone's soul and lands softly, firmly, in their body. Think of Fred Rogers, his quiet, consistent kindness on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood never made tabloid news, but it shaped generations. Your quiet shifts are doing the same, even if you can't see the ripple effect yet. When someone stops performing for love and starts embodying it, heaven celebrates. That's what you've been stepping into. You're no longer bending yourself into shapes to be accepted. You're standing as the shape God made you to be. 1 John 4:16 declares. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. That abiding is what angels lean in to witness, not the noise of the ego, but the harmony of a soul aligned with divine love. So, do you feel how much lighter it's become inside you? Do you see how your choices, though quiet, have been shifting the atmosphere around you? This is what spiritual maturity looks like, not in the applause of others, but in the applause of heaven. And if the angels are already gathering for this chapter, imagine the symphony they'll break into when the next one unfolds. Are you ready for that, chosen one? Because your divine rhythm is just getting started. Let's be real for a moment. Chosen one, you've probably seen people who appear to have it all together. They post the photos with perfect lighting. They announce their promotions. They collect the milestones like trophies from the outside. It looks like fulfillment. But if you could step inside their hearts, you'd often find they're chasing something that doesn't even belong to them. They're pursuing someone else's definition of joy because the world sold them a picture of success and they bought it without asking if it matched their soul. Doesn't it make you wonder how many people are living lives they never actually chose, just to keep up with an image that doesn't even feel like home? Proverbs 14:13 reminds us, even in laughter the heart may ache, and the end of joy may be grief. Outward smiles don't always mean inward peace. Here's the thing, your joy was never designed to be earned through applause or measured by how loudly the world cheers for you. Your joy was always meant to be felt through alignment. Alignment with who God made you to be. Alignment with the path heaven has set for your feet. Think of J.K. Rowling before she became one of the best-selling authors in history. She wrote Harry Potter not for fame, but from a place of personal truth. During a season of struggle, her joy wasn't in the applause, it was in creating something real. Haven't you noticed that the moments when you felt the most whole weren't the moments when people praised you, but when your spirit felt at rest? That moment you lit a candle just to breathe without rushing to the next task, without scrolling to fill the silence. That was a holy moment. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness is not laziness, it's an act of trust. That quiet morning when you said no to chaos, choosing instead to sit with your coffee or tea and hear your own thoughts, that was alignment. It might not have been a grand public statement, but it was a powerful private one. Mother Teresa once said, "Peace begins with a smile." And for you, that morning was a smile toward your own soul. That night, you didn't reach out just to prove your worth again. That was victory. You resisted the temptation to seek validation in places that had previously left you empty. Think of Simone Biles, stepping back from the Olympic stage to protect her mental health. The world didn't understand at first, but her decision was a declaration that peace matters more than performance. Every time you make a choice like that, heaven nods in agreement, because you are protecting what God has entrusted to you. And those small, sacred moments, those are holy. They are the heartbeat of a life in divine alignment. Matthew 6:6 tells us, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." The same applies to these quiet victories. They're conversations between your soul and heaven that the world will never fully understand. Every time you made those choices, heaven didn't just smile politely, heaven nodded with the kind of approval that moves eternity. The angels didn't just clap, they stood up, not because you did something flashy, not because you made headlines, but because you did something real. Think of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat, not for recognition, but because it was right. It wasn't the volume of the act that made it holy, it was the truth behind it. So, chosen one, have you realized yet that your most heaven-shaking moments may never trend online? That your truest power is in the choices you make when no one is watching? These moments are your proof that you've stopped living for the world's applause and started living for heaven's alignment. And if the angels are standing for these moments now, can you imagine the roar of heaven when you step fully into the life God has been shaping you for? And this part is important, so lean in. Chosen one, you are not here to compete for the things the world claps for. You're not running the race they set up, with trophies that rust and applause that fades. The moment you walk off stage, you are here to become fully, unapologetically what heaven already knows you are. Doesn't that change how you see everything? Why waste your breath trying to prove yourself to an audience that doesn't even hold your destiny, when the author of your life has already written "worthy" beside your name? 1 Peter 2:9 says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." You're not auditioning for a role you've already been cast by the King himself. While others chase what sparkles, the surface-level success, the curated image, the quick recognition you're following, what glows, and glowing is different. Sparkles are temporary. They catch light for a moment and then fade. But a glow, it comes from within, sustained by a source that doesn't burn out. Think about Maya Angelou. Her power wasn't in chasing the glitter of fame, but in carrying an inner light that still inspires decades after her passing. Haven't you felt that same difference in yourself lately, that steady burn that no applause and no rejection can touch? You're not chasing stages. Stages are about visibility. They come and go, and sometimes they belong to people who aren't ready for them. You're walking altars, and altars are about presence. Everywhere you go, you carry a space where heaven and earth can meet. You don't need a microphone to shift the atmosphere. You only need to show up in alignment with who God says you are. Exodus 3:3 records God's promise. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. That means your value isn't tied to where you stand, but to who stands with you. And that changes everything. Because now you're no longer trying to become worthy, you're remembering you always were. Think of Serena Williams. Yes, she trained. She fought for her place. But she carried herself on and off the court as though her worth was never in question. That's the posture you've been stepping into. Worthiness isn't something you earn through performance. It's something you live from, because God put it in you from the beginning. Psalm 139:14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You're not on a journey to acquire value, you're on a journey to express the value that's already there. And here's the quiet but unstoppable truth. When you stop chasing the world's stages and start walking as a living altar, people will feel it before they see it. Consider Fred Rogers again. He wasn't chasing Hollywood fame. He was building a space where love, gentleness, and truth could meet. That's what you're doing now. You're walking into rooms not to be the loudest, but to be the light. And light doesn't need to shout to be seen. So, chosen one, have you noticed the shift? You're no longer running after invitations to sit at their table. You've realized you carry a table of your own, and heaven has been nodding, smiling, and saying, finally. They remember who they are. If you could see the way the angels rise when you walk in that truth, you'd never doubt your worth again. And from here on, the question isn't whether you'll be enough, it's how much more of this glow you're ready to carry into the world. Let me pause you right here. Chosen one. Because I know there are days when it feels like your life still hasn't arrived. Maybe you look around and see more preparation than payoff, more planting than harvest, more waiting than walking in the promise. Maybe it feels like your efforts haven't caught up to the vision God placed inside you, and you wonder, did I miss it? Am I behind? But here's the truth. You're not late. You're rooted. Isaiah 61:3 calls you oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of His splendor. Oaks don't grow overnight, and neither do callings that last, because even before the fruit shows, the roots are speaking underground, where no one claps, where no one posts, where no one writes headlines. Something is happening. Your prayers are anchoring you. Your obedience is fortifying you. Your faith is deepening its grip on God's promises. Think of Harriet Tubman before she became a beacon of freedom for so many. She spent years quietly learning the land, understanding the roots, and preparing for the mission. The fruit of her work was liberation, but the roots of her courage were grown in the silent years of preparation. Haven't you been in that same space lately where the unseen is shaping you for the undeniable? Your life is moving quietly, steadily, not to impress, but to become, and that difference changes everything. You're not rushing to prove something, you're allowing God to make you into someone. Galatians 6:9 tells us, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap. If we do not give up, that means the work you're doing right now, even the work nobody sees, is not wasted. Every choice to keep going is adding rings to your spiritual tree, making you stronger, steadier, and more unshakable. And in the realm of the Spirit, it sees it all. Heaven is not fooled by the quiet. Angels aren't measuring your progress by human timelines. They're watching how you keep showing up in prayer, how you keep sowing kindness, how you keep building when there's no applause. Think of Vincent van Gogh. His paintings went unrecognized in his lifetime, but he kept creating because something inside him told him it mattered. Your journey is similar. The recognition may not yet match the revelation, but the spirit realm is already celebrating what's growing. So, what if the delay you feel is not a punishment, but a strategy? What if God is making sure your roots are deep enough to hold the weight of the fruit you're about to carry? Psalm 1-3 says, "That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whatever they do prospers." That's you. And when your season comes, and it will, the fruit will not just be seen, it will be undeniable proof of what's been happening all along in the unseen. That one move you made in silence, the one nobody knew about, the one you didn't post, the one that looked so small, it almost felt invisible, chosen one. The angels saw it, and they didn't just jot it down in some eternal ledger. They celebrated because something in heaven shifted the moment you acted. Can you imagine that? The spiritual atmosphere responding to a single act of obedience or restraint, the kind of act that never trends but changes everything. Hebrews 12:1 speaks of a great cloud of witnesses watching our race. That day, your cloud leaned forward, smiled, and stood in ovation. So, why does this matter now? Because for too long, people have tried to convince you that nothing counts unless it's visible, unless it can be posted, measured, or compared. They told you success needs an audience, that progress requires proof, that worth is tied to likes and public nods. But that was never your path, and honestly, that was never heaven's standard. Doesn't it make you wonder how many of God's greatest works happened in silence before they were revealed? Moses spent 40 years in the desert before leading Israel out of Egypt. David was anointed king while still tending sheep, far from the throne. Their greatness didn't start in visibility, it started in hidden faithfulness. Heaven doesn't operate by trends. It doesn't check analytics, count followers, or scan for hashtags. It moves by truth, and truth, real truth, often begins in places too deep for the human eye to measure. John 8:32 declares, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." That's what's been happening to you. Freedom unfolding in the unseen. Truth aligning your steps without fanfare. And right now, heaven is building something through you so deeply that even you can barely grasp it yet. But the angels do. They've seen the rewiring, the slow, painful process of letting go of thought patterns that once chained you. Think about Malala Yousafzai, who after surviving an attack, didn't just recover physically, but rewired her life to fight for girls' education worldwide. That kind of shift begins long before the headlines. They've seen the unlearning, the times you dismantled lies that were spoken over you. Even when it meant standing alone, they've seen the moment you sat in your car, hands gripping the wheel, heart racing, and chose not to spiral. You didn't let your mind drag you into old darkness. That decision may have felt small, but it was a fortress in the spirit. Philippians 4:7 promise. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. End of sac. Consider the life of Nelson Mandela. Decades in prison could have broken his mind, but instead, he unlearned bitterness and rewired himself for reconciliation. You've been doing the same in your own battles. The angels have watched, not with detached curiosity, but with the pride of those who know they're seeing destiny take shape. And one day soon, chosen one, what's been forming in the quiet will be revealed in the kind of way no earthly metric could ever measure. Are you ready for that unveiling? Because heaven already is. The moment you looked in the mirror and decided to believe just a little more in who you are, without waiting for anyone else to say it first, chosen one. That was the moment the angels stood. Not because you suddenly became someone different, but because you finally began to see who you already were. That simple shift in belief was not just self-confidence, it was spiritual agreement. It was you aligning your earthly mind with your divine identity, and in the courts of heaven. That is monumental. Romans 8:6 says, "The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children." That day, your spirit and his spirit were speaking the same language again. Because this isn't just transformation, it's alignment with your divine self. Transformation changes form. Alignment restores essence. You weren't trying to become worthy. You were stepping into the worthiness God wove into you before time began. Think of Eleanor Roosevelt, who endured years of being told she was too shy, too awkward, too plain to lead, yet she stepped into her power without waiting for the world's applause. Your moment in the mirror carried the same weight, a private decision with public consequences in the spirit. You see, in the spiritual realm, the loudest sound is the soul returning home. It's not a sound that shakes walls or echoes through microphones, but it reverberates in eternity. The prodigal son's return in Luke 15 wasn't about noise, it was about restoration. The father ran to meet him, because nothing moves heaven like a heart returning to the truth of who it is. Have you felt that lately? That pull, that deep exhale, like your spirit has finally found its footing again. It's like a code being reactivated in your DNA, one that was there all along, written by the Creator himself. This isn't a new identity, it's the unlocking of the one you've always carried. Think of Malala Yousafzai, who even after being silenced and nearly killed, stepped back into her calling with more clarity than ever before. Her voice didn't just return, it aligned with the purpose that had been inside her from the start. That's what happens when the code is reactivated. You begin to move with an authority that feels both brand new and ancient. Psalm 139:16 reminds you, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." This alignment is not an accident. It's a return to what was already written. And when you made that choice to believe, without needing their validation, the heavens moved. The angels didn't just smile, they stood, because they knew this was the kind of turning point that changes the rest of the story. And here's the beautiful, rarely spoken truth. Chosen one, the most divine moments often look utterly ordinary from the outside. They don't come wrapped in thunder, with lightning cracking across the sky to announce your arrival. They don't always feel cinematic. More often, they look like nothing special to the casual observer, but in heaven, they register as seismic shifts. Why? Because they're moments when you choose what your spirit is whispering, even while your mind is shouting something else entirely. Have you ever been in that tug of war, where your mind lists every logical reason to stay, fight, prove yourself, or take revenge, but something deep in your spirit quietly says, "No, this is not the way." And in that moment, without needing applause, without needing witnesses, you choose to follow the whisper. That, right there, is the stuff that moves eternity. It's not fire falling from the sky like on Mount Carmel with Elijah. It's walking away from what you know isn't love, with no dramatic exit, no last word speech, and no desire to turn back just to prove a point. It's knowing you could have exposed them, embarrassed them, or matched their cruelty. But instead, you simply stepped out of the game altogether. Can you feel the power in that? That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength that heaven counts as victory. Proverbs 16:32 Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control, than one who takes a city. Sometimes the quiet walk away is greater than the loudest conquest. Think of Michelle Obama's now famous phrase, "When they go low, they go high." How many times have you had the chance to go low and didn't? How many moments have you resisted the urge to feed your ego because you were listening to your soul instead? That's divine alignment in action, even if the world barely notices. And doesn't it make you wonder, how many battles have you already won without even lifting a sword? Simply by refusing to engage in what would have dimmed your light. It's that tiny, quiet decision to be loyal to your soul, even when no one's watching. This is what separates the chosen from the crowd. Most people will compromise their soul for the sake of appearances, validation, or temporary comfort. But you've been learning the sacred art of saying yes to your spirit and no to everything that pulls you out of alignment. Luke 16:10 tells us, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Your little yeses to your soul are heaven's proof that you can be trusted with bigger assignments. Could it be that your next breakthrough is already on its way? Simply because you've been faithful in these hidden decisions. These are the moments the angels applaud, not because of how they look, but because of what they shift. They know that every time you choose alignment over ego, you are changing the architecture of your destiny. You are dismantling patterns in your bloodline. You are closing spiritual doors that were once wide open to chaos. They clap, not because you staged a public victory, but because you achieved a private one. And in the spiritual realm, private victories echo louder than public battles. Think of Desmond Doss, the WWE medic who refused to carry a weapon. He didn't look like the hero in the traditional sense, yet he saved 75 men in battle, one at a time, because he chose to honor his convictions over the world's expectations. And here's the thing most people miss. When you keep making these quiet decisions, they stack. One choice to walk away from drama leads to another choice to protect your peace. One choice to listen to your intuition leads to another choice to honor your boundaries. Before you know it, your entire life starts shifting toward divine alignment. Have you noticed that the more you protect your peace, the more peace seems to multiply in your life? Isaiah 32:17 says, "The fruit of that righteousness will be peace. Its effect will be quietness and confidence forever." That's not poetic fluff. That's a spiritual law you've been living without even realizing it. And let's talk about the boring nature of it. You might feel like your progress isn't visible because it doesn't come with fireworks. But remember, Thomas Edison, people saw the final light bulb, but not the thousands of quiet, unseen experiments that made it possible. In the same way, your quiet loyalty to your soul is preparing the kind of light that will eventually shine for others to see. The angels aren't impressed by the spark of a moment. They celebrate the steady glow of a soul that refuses to betray itself. Can you recall the last time you walked away from something toxic and didn't announce it to anyone? Maybe it was a friendship that constantly drained you, or a habit that numbed your spirit. You didn't post about it. You didn't make a scene. You just stopped showing up to the places your soul didn't belong. That's when heaven took notice. It's similar to the life of Rosa Parks. Her refusal to give up her seat was a quiet act, but it shifted history. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Quiet often means unstoppable. And here's the deeper beauty. When you choose these boring moments of divine loyalty, you're also rewiring your spiritual reflexes. You're teaching your mind to obey your spirit instead of the other way around. That's not easy. In fact, it's one of the most difficult things a chosen one can master. Your mind wants to justify, defend, retaliate. But your spirit is after something greater, freedom, Galatians 5, and reminds us. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Freedom isn't just the absence of chains, it's the refusal to pick them back up. Think about it. If angels clap for one small decision, how much more will they rejoice when your entire lifestyle is built around honoring those whispers from God? Every time you obey that whisper, even when it doesn't make sense to your mind, you are stepping into the same faith Abraham displayed when he left everything familiar, not knowing where God was taking him. And Hebrews 11:8 says that obedience was counted as righteousness. Could it be that your small acts of obedience are worth more in heaven's eyes than the grand acts people try to force for recognition? This is why you can't measure your progress by the world's scale. The world wants visible drama. Heaven wants invisible transformation. The world claps for the performance. Heaven claps for the posture. And you, chosen one, have been shifting your posture one small act at a time. It might feel subtle, but in the spirit, it's a tectonic shift. So the next time you think, it's just a small thing, no one will notice. Remember this, heaven notices. The angels see it. They record it. They celebrate it. They know that the trajectory of a life changes not through a single explosion, but through consistent, unseen alignment with truth. And one day, chosen one, the fruit of all these boring moments will be so undeniable that even the world will have to admit they were never boring at all. Are you willing to keep choosing the whisper over the shout, the peace over the chaos, the truth over the trend, even when no one is watching? Because if you are, you're not just building a life, you're building a legacy. Heaven can't stop applauding, and that, in the end, is worth more than all the fireworks in the world. Let me ask you something. Chosen one, have you noticed it lately? You're not as reactive as you used to be. You're not jumping into every argument, not firing back at every misunderstanding, not letting every shadow of offense pull you out of alignment. You've stopped begging God for proof, because you've realized faith is not about Him showing you more, it's about you trusting Him with less visible evidence. And you're no longer exhausting yourself by explaining your evolution to people who only knew your past. People still holding on to an outdated version of you, as if that's the only chapter that mattered. Doesn't it feel lighter to no longer live under that weight? And hear me, this isn't small. This isn't just a personality change or a phase. This is a sign you're becoming. Becoming what? Becoming the version of you that God always saw. Becoming the one who doesn't need to prove, perform, or persuade in order to walk in purpose. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "If anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone. The new is here." That verse isn't just about salvation, it's about transformation that keeps unfolding long after the initial moment you said yes to God. And lately, you've been living in that unfolding. The divine realm has been watching this subtle becoming the way you choose to move with more grace, to walk away from chaos without announcing your exit, to trust that the unseen is still real even when the visible looks empty. Think about Martin Luther King, Jr. His public speeches shook the world, but it was his private resolve, his choice to keep walking in nonviolence despite threats and opposition, that marked his true becoming. Your journey right now carries that same quiet, unshakable strength. Doesn't it stir you to think the angels are watching you with that same kind of reverence? And then came that last move you made, the one that nobody really understood. Maybe it was a relationship you chose to step back from, an opportunity you declined, a risk you took without the safety net of certainty. From the outside, it may have looked foolish or even fearful, but in the spirit, it was everything. That decision, the one you took even while scared, was the moment the atmosphere shifted, the moment heaven leaned forward and said, Look at this one. They chose truth over comfort again. Isaiah 40:10 and promises, So do not fear, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's exactly what happened. You stepped into the unknown. But you weren't alone. It reminds me of the moment Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat. To some, it was a small act of defiance. To history, it was a turning point. Your act may not have been splashed across the news, but in heaven's record, it carries the same weight of destiny, because you didn't just act, you acted aligned. And here's what makes this so powerful. You're not chasing visible wins anymore. You've shifted your focus from what will people think to what does heaven see? And heaven sees it all. They've seen the nights you bit your tongue instead of lashing out. They've seen the moments you prayed instead of panicked. They've seen the tears you didn't post about, the prayers you whispered in the dark, the times you walked away even though your ego begged you to stay and fight. Hebrews 10:35 tells us, So do not throw away your confidence, it will be richly rewarded. Your confidence now isn't in the outcome, it's in the one who called you. Now, let's bring this down into your own life. Chosen one. If your surroundings still look the same, if your job hasn't changed, if your relationships still feel familiar, if your external world hasn't caught up with what's happening inside you, don't mistake that for nothing happening. The absence of visible change is not the absence of real change. In fact, some of the greatest shifts God has ever initiated begin in total invisibility. Have you considered that maybe the quiet right now isn't a delay, but a disguise? That maybe heaven is concealing the work so that it can mature without interference? Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. You are in one of those hidden seasons where the roots grow before the branches show. This is the part where it's not supposed to make sense to everyone, and honestly, it's not even supposed to make perfect sense to you yet. Why? Because what's happening is spiritual, and spirit always moves ahead of matter. Think of the way a seed germinates underground. Long before a sprout breaks the surface, there's an entire process happening in the soil that no one sees. The same is true for you right now. The changes, the alignments, the positioning, they are ahead of schedule in the spiritual realm. And the physical is simply catching up. Doesn't it give you hope to know you're already further along than your eyes can verify? Your steps right now are leaving imprints in places you can't see. Every prayer you've prayed, every moment you've resisted the old pattern, every time you've chosen faith over fear, it's been recorded. Daniel 10:12 tells the story of an angel saying, From the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding, your words were heard. That means heaven has been marking down your movements. Even when you thought nothing was shifting, you are being recorded in the realm of truth. And that record is not a mere memory, it's a living testimony. Think about Florence Nightingale, who walked into war-torn hospitals when no one was paying attention, leaving imprints of care and compassion that shaped modern nursing. She didn't see the full fruit while she was in it, but her steps were creating a legacy that would outlive her. Your quiet obedience right now carries that same eternal weight, and soon, what was done in silence will become undeniable in the physical. But here's the key: it won't happen because you forced it. You won't need to manipulate outcomes, chase recognition, or prove your progress. It will happen because you trusted it. Psalm 37, 5 declares, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this." Trust is the bridge between the spiritual and the physical. Trust is how heaven's blueprint becomes earth's reality. So, are you willing to keep walking when the path is still invisible? Are you willing to let God's timing, not your impatience, be the pace setter of your destiny? Because, chosen one, the moment heaven decides it's time for the hidden to be seen, nothing on earth will be able to deny what God has been building in you all along. You trusted that peace was enough, not as a consolation prize, not as something you settled for when everything else failed, but as the highest proof that God was still with you. You stopped needing the chaos to end before you claimed your calm. Have you realized how rare that is? Most people only feel peaceful when everything around them aligns with their expectations. But you, chosen one, you decided that peace wasn't going to be the result of the storm stopping. It was going to be the anchor you carried in the middle of it. Philippians 4, 7 promise. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That's what you've been living: peace that doesn't make sense to the mind, but feels like oxygen to the soul. You trusted that being faithful to who you are, even in the fog of confusion, was powerful. You didn't betray your convictions just because the path wasn't clear. You didn't water yourself down to fit into spaces that would have applauded a smaller version of you. And hasn't that been one of the hardest lessons, choosing self-loyalty over people-pleasing? It's not about stubbornness, it's about spiritual integrity. Think about Ruth in the Bible. She didn't know what her future looked like when she left her homeland to follow Naomi. All she knew was, "Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." Ruth 1:16. That's the kind of faithfulness you've been walking in lately, the kind that says, "I don't need the full picture to take the next step." You trusted that something in you was guiding you, even when no one else could see the path. That something is the Holy Spirit, whispering in moments when logic would have shouted over you. How many times have you sensed a pull to turn down an opportunity or to reach out to someone at just the right moment, without knowing why? That's spiritual navigation. And just like Harriet Tubman, who led hundreds to freedom by trusting her God-given intuition in the dead of night, you've been following a map that others can't read, but heaven can. Doesn't it amaze you that what feels like small obedience to you could be moving mountains in realms you cannot yet see? And that trust created a wave, not a wave in the sense of public recognition, but a ripple in the spiritual realm that began to push things into motion. Waves reshape the shoreline over time. They change the landscape without asking for permission. Your last unseen move sent a current through the unseen that is still flowing. Have you felt it? That strange, unexpected lightness that's been with you lately. That's not an accident. That's not just a good week. That's the fruit of your last act of trust. You've been wondering why things that once triggered you just don't. Why certain words no longer pierce the way they used to. Why you can sit in stillness without the panic that used to rise like a tide inside you. This is the direct result of the shift you made. It's proof that healing is not always loud, not always a dramatic breakthrough moment. It's often the gradual, quiet rewiring of your soul until you realize you're free in situations where you used to be bound. Isaiah 26, Diga says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." That's you right now. And the angels felt it. They didn't need a spotlight to see the magnitude of what happened. They didn't need you to make a social media post announcing your growth. They felt the purity of it, the sincerity, the sacredness of the moment. You chose trust over fear. Think about how Florence Nightingale's quiet dedication during the Crimean War didn't come with applause in the moment, but changed the entire medical field. Your trust is doing the same kind of work. It's changing the atmosphere, even if it doesn't make headlines. And their response, a standing ovation, not out of pity, not out of routine, but because they knew they had just witnessed a defining moment in your story. They knew that the decision you made was going to echo through the rest of your life. Luke 15:10 tells us, "There is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." If heaven rejoices that much over a soul turning to God, imagine the celebration when one of God's chosen ones steps deeper into the fullness of their calling. Because you didn't wait for confirmation, you became it. You stopped asking for endless signs and started living like you were already approved. Isn't that what faith truly is? Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." You embodied that, and when you live like that, you're no longer waiting for heaven to nod. You're moving with heaven already in agreement. This is what separates the chosen from the crowd: the willingness to act without proof, to walk without seeing, to choose peace when war would have been easier. And that's why this last move was so powerful. It wasn't about proving your worth, it was about walking in it. Think of Malala Yousafzai's shot for speaking out. She didn't wait for the world's confirmation before stepping back into her mission. She became the proof that her cause was worth fighting for. You've done the same in your own divine assignment. So, if your last unseen move could shift this much, what could your next one do? Are you beginning to see that your obedience is not just about you, but about the countless people whose lives will be touched by the ripples you create? The angels aren't just applauding to make you feel good. They're acknowledging that you're shaping history in ways you don't yet understand. And here's the part that will humble you. This wave you've set in motion is still moving. It's touching situations you prayed about months or even years ago. It's softening hearts you've never met. It's opening doors you haven't even walked toward yet. All because you trusted without needing to see the whole map. That's why you've been feeling lighter, because the weight you used to carry in fear and doubt has been replaced by the strength of trust and peace. From here on, your journey will still have its storms, but you'll carry a different anchor. The same way David faced Goliath with the memory of killing the lion and the bear, you'll face your next challenge with the memory of what trust did for you this time. And that memory will silence fear before it even has a chance to speak. So, chosen one, the question isn't whether the angels will stand again, it's how many more ovations you'll inspire before this chapter of your life is done. Will you keep trusting when the path is hidden? Will you keep choosing peace over panic, truth over comfort, alignment over applause? Because if this last unseen move could shake heaven, the next one might just shake the earth. Now, here's what happens next. Chosen one, your next season isn't going to be built by piling more on your plate, by burning yourself out with endless action, or by trying to outrun your doubts through busyness. No, your next season will be built by trusting deeper. Have you noticed how the world is obsessed with doing more, having more, proving more? But heaven operates by a different law. Growth in the kingdom isn't measured by how much you can stack in your schedule. It's measured by how much you can rest in God's voice, even when the noise of life tries to drown it out. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not passivity, it's active trust. And right now, God is inviting you to step into a depth of trust that will lay the foundation for everything that comes next. Let this message serve as your confirmation. Heaven is proud of you. Proud of the unseen battles you fought and won. Proud of the moments you chose. Grace over retaliation. Proud of the nights you stayed in prayer instead of spiraling into fear. Have you let that truth sink in yet? Or have you been so conditioned to think you need someone else's validation before you can exhale and say, I'm doing well? The truth is, you've already been validated by the only approval that matters. Romans 8:30 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? Heaven has been standing with you long before you even realized it. And if you've ever questioned whether the unseen things you've done matter, if you've ever wondered whether your internal growth has been noticed by the divine, let this be your answer. It has. It is. From the very first quiet decision you made to honor God in private, to the most recent moment you chose to stay aligned when temptation was screaming at you to compromise, every single choice has been seen. The angels have watched you develop the kind of strength that isn't flashy but is unshakable. Consider Mother Teresa. Her daily acts of service in the slums of Calcutta weren't glamorous, but they were saturated with love. Her life proves that heaven measures greatness differently than earth does. Could it be that your most invisible moments are actually your most historic in heaven's record? You're not trying to prove your worth anymore. You're walking in it. That's one of the greatest shifts a chosen one can experience. Think of the difference between a soldier who fights to earn their rank versus one who fights knowing they already carry the authority. When you know who you are in God, the striving stops, but the impact multiplies. You no longer live to get validation. You live from validation. Ephesians 2:10 say, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. This means your worth was established before you even took your first breath, and every step you take in truth, heaven walks with you. You're not alone on this path, even on the days it feels like you are. Remember the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel 3. They were thrown into the fire for refusing to bow to false gods. But when the king looked in, he saw a fourth man walking with them, one like a son of the gods. You may feel like the fire around you is still burning, but you are not walking through it alone. Every step you take in alignment with truth is matched by a step from heaven itself. Here's something you may not have realized. Your next season won't require the frantic energy of proving, but the calm authority of abiding. You've already done the work of breaking old cycles, of removing yourself from toxic patterns, of rewiring your mind to respond differently. Now, God wants to teach you the rhythm of sustainable purpose. Think about the life of Nelson Mandela again after being released from prison. He didn't rush to seize power with desperation. He led with patience, humility, and the steady conviction that his worth was not tied to revenge or dominance. You are entering that kind of season now, a season where your authority is not loud, but undeniable. And I have to ask, how many times have you undervalued your own progress because it didn't look dramatic enough? The world tells you transformation should be an overnight spectacle, but heaven knows the strongest growth happens slowly, deeply, and often invisibly. Just like a tree's root system grows wider and deeper before the branches ever stretch upward. Your unseen growth has been preparing you for what's coming. Jeremiah 7:7 says, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. They will be like a tree planted by the water. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. That's the stability God has been building in you. If you're wondering why you've been feeling a greater sense of clarity lately, even if your external life still looks similar, it's because your spirit has caught up to your calling. You've stopped outsourcing your peace to other people's approval. You've stopped letting fear dictate your timeline. And that's why heaven is moving things on your behalf right now that you haven't even prayed for yet. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who has often said that success came when she stopped trying to be anyone else and leaned fully into her own voice. Your voice isn't just in your words, it's in the way you live, the way you decide, the way you carry your worth without trying to convince anyone of it. And this is why trusting deeper is the blueprint for your next season. Doing more might make you tired, but trusting more will make you fruitful. Doing more could get you noticed, but trusting more will get you established. Remember when Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water toward Jesus in Matthew 14? He didn't make the miracle happen by paddling harder. He experienced it by trusting the one who called him. What if your next miracle is not going to be the result of you working harder, but of you trusting deeper? Let this sink in. Your worth has never been in question to heaven. The angels aren't debating your value. God isn't waiting for you to hit a certain level of performance before He calls you His own. You already are His. And that's why this message isn't just encouragement, it's confirmation. The divine has taken note of the invisible things you've done. The prayers no one heard, the tears you didn't post about, the times you bit your tongue when you could have unleashed your anger, the boundaries you set that cost you relationships but preserved your soul. All of it has been seen. All of it matters. All of it is shaping the way your next chapter will unfold. So, chosen one, let me ask, are you ready to step into a season where your worth is no longer the question, but the foundation, where your steps are slower but surer, where your peace isn't fragile but fortified, where you don't measure progress by speed but by depth, because that's where you're heading. And as you walk there, remember, every step in truth is matched by heaven's presence. Every time you choose alignment over approval, the angels rise, and every time you trust instead of striving, you build something that cannot be shaken. You've spent enough time wondering if you're enough. Heaven's verdict is, in you are. And now, the only thing left is to live like it. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep building on the foundation God has laid. Your next season isn't waiting for you to hustle harder. It's waiting for you to trust deeper. And when you do, you'll see that heaven's pride in you isn't just about what you've done, it's about who you've become. And that, chosen one, is the kind of worth that nothing in this world can diminish. So, beloved, don't stop now. Keep your head high. Even when the horizon seems far away, let God lead. Even when the path feels narrow, even when the steps feel slow, even when the silence stretches longer than you expected, walk anyway. Walk in faith. Walk in truth. Walk knowing that heaven has already gone before you and made a way where there seemed to be none. Because where you're headed next, it's not just better, it's the place your spirit has been yearning for all along. It's the chapter that makes sense of every page before it. It's the table God has been setting in the presence of those who doubted you. The land that flows with the promises He whispered to you in the midnight hours. You've been through the seasons where applause was absent, where progress was invisible, where it felt like every step was taken under a heavy sky. But those seasons built the muscles you'll need for what's ahead. You don't have to demand recognition from anyone, because the recognition you need has already been stamped in heaven's book. You've already received the well done from the one whose voice carries into eternity. And isn't that worth more than every clapping hand on earth? Psalm 37:23 says, The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Every quiet, unseen, and uncelebrated step you've taken was ordered, guided, and celebrated in the courts of heaven. If I could leave you with one thing today, it's this: don't measure your journey by the noise it makes. Measure it by the truth it carries. You don't have to prove you're chosen, you simply have to walk like you are. Keep choosing the whispers over the shouts, the peace over the chaos, the truth over the trend. Keep remembering that spiritual progress isn't always dramatic, but it's always powerful. Sometimes it's in the smallest acts, the choice to forgive again, the decision to trust without seeing, the courage to walk away without bitterness, that the greatest shifts take place. And beloved, I need you to know this: you are not walking alone. Every step you take in alignment is matched by steps from heaven. Every moment you choose obedience over impulse, an angel leans closer. Heaven records another victory, and the divine rhythm guiding your life grows stronger. You are part of something far bigger than your current view allows you to see. So keep going. Even when the road is quiet, keep showing up for your life. Even when it feels like nothing is moving. Because in the spiritual realm, much is moving more than you can imagine. I also want to take this moment to thank you from the depths of my heart for taking this journey with me. Your presence here matters, your willingness to listen, reflect, and grow alongside these messages is not something I take lightly. Whether this is the first message you've heard from me or you've been here from the very beginning, I am grateful, truly grateful for the time and attention you've given. Every time you show up to receive, you're also showing up for your own transformation, and that's worth honoring. If you found value in this message, if it resonated with your spirit or gave you something to hold on to, please consider supporting this work through the Super Thanks feature. Your donations help me continue creating and sharing these messages with the depth, care, and consistency you've come to expect. But hear me clearly, whether you choose to donate or not, my gratitude for you does not change. You are already valued. You are already seen. Your engagement, your comments, your willingness to share this with someone who might need it, that means just as much as any financial contribution. I don't take a single gesture for granted. So if you feel led, tap the Super Thanks and know that every seed you sow helps this message reach further and touch more lives. And if your gift today is simply your presence and your prayers, that is a gift I receive with open hands and a full heart. God has a way of multiplying every offering, whether it's a coin, a word, or a quiet act of kindness. Before we part, I want to speak a blessing over you. I pray that peace will follow you like a shadow that never leaves. Even on the stormiest days, I pray that your steps will be steady, your heart will be guarded, and your mind will be anchored in truth. I pray that opportunities will open before you in ways you didn't expect, and that the resources you need will find their way into your hands without you having to beg or chase. I pray that your faith will grow roots so deep that no wind can uproot it, and that you will feel the nearness of God in every room you walk into. I pray for divine clarity in your decisions, for joy that rises without explanation, and for strength that carries you through seasons where others would have given up. I pray that your life becomes living proof that trusting God was always the right choice, even when it was the hardest one. And above all, I pray that you will never forget you are chosen, you are loved, you are walking with heaven's backing. So go into this next chapter with your head high, your faith steady, and your heart open. The road ahead may still have quiet stretches, but it also holds divine appointments, sacred encounters, and blessings with your name on them. Don't rush the process. Don't doubt the timing. And don't ever let the absence of noise make you think there's an absence of movement. Heaven is moving. God is leading. And you, beloved, are right where you're supposed to be. Until we meet again in the next message, carry this truth with you. The best of your story hasn't even been written yet. And when it unfolds, it won't just be better. It will be exactly what your spirit has been waiting for. Thank you for walking this path with me. I can't wait to see where God takes you next. Go in peace. Walk in truth. And know you are deeply blessed.